Okay, third time's a charm. Let's see if we can do it right this time. Hey, you know what? Once again, I'm only on here for about an hour. So what's really annoying about this is that I can't, really get into this until I gotta have my moment. I gotta have my little, you know, process. And then that way everyone can chill out. I want to be able to move around and say things and see things. Like, hi guys, how's it going? Before it's like I moved over here and I was like, "Rrr." My little webcam wasn't working. Anyway, we're gonna play a little music. Sit back, chill, let everyone come in. Sorry for the difficulties, people. Let's go. All right, that's enough of that. We're on a Monday. What can I say? It's a Monday. We're going to move over here real quick. A little different than the Sunday morning craziness, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, if you guys are in here and you're wondering what's the deal with this guy playing goofy piano in the politics section, if you're wondering what the heck is a time dad alpha, why is this guy here trying to pretend like he's something that he's not? Well, because for a long time, I don't think people would have known how to talk to a guy like me. Even I stand probably around 6'3", and I have a pretty large frame. And especially when I walk into a room, I have the face. I'm like, it's one of those what we call the permanent, sergeant face, where it's like you're always full of disgust and dismay. No one can ever, actually live up to your standards. And you sort of put that off so that people will know how to act around you, and so that they know that you mean business. Unfortunately, you get through decades of that, and you're just like, okay, well, I want to turn that off now. And it's really hard. It's really hard to turn it off, especially it's like you don't know that's the face that you're walking around with every day. It's not like the salesman face, which is like, I got to practice this. Hi, how's it going? I'd like to sell you a car. It's not the politician face or the what I like to call the beauty queen face. Like, hi, welcome everybody. Da, da, da. I like thinking about serious things. And so hence the reason I come in here and I say, hey, I'm here to be serious, but I'm going to say things that your politicians aren't going to say. You're probably not going to see this on a YouTube video. You're not going to see that. This is probably one of the number one things that the media companies today will never promote. They'll never talk about it because it makes them obsolete, and they don't know what to do without work, because they think work equals security, work equals safety, work equals money, money equals safety, and it's just this endless cycle over and over and over again. And they say, oh, you want to create this world with residual income. You want to have, wealth for the rest of your life. You want to be, independently wealthy. But no one ever describes what independently wealthy looks like. No one ever brings that to the forefront. It's like, hey, does independently wealthy mean you're not in want for simple, needs? And I always refer to Maslow, the psychologist, because he talks about the hierarchy of needs, where certain things will take precedent over another, depending on how, in need of it you are. For example, you need food. You need it. You need some shelter. It's an important thing. But guess what else? You need water more than that. Oh, and everyone knows that. So if you had to choose, it's like, hey, if I have to get water, I have to get water, right? But guess what? It gets even worse than that. You need to breathe. You need to have some type of conscious state in order to maintain sentience. And then when you are deprived of this, you suddenly are deprived of your psychological faculties. What's funny is about that balance is you can also overindulge. Anyone who's ever been drunk knows how this works. Anyone who's ever overeaten knows how this works, how it literally incapacitates you if you overeat. And we even have a word for it called the itis. Anyone who's ever had a big lunch and tried to go back to work, you ever see how that works? The reason I'm saying all this stuff is because you can be overly stimulated and over inundated by information. And that's what you're getting, these 24-hour news cycles where it's not just news. It's the specific style of news to constantly propagandize you, to make you think that the world is ending if you don't vote for a particular political action. And some actions that they know that they're not going to be able to get away with, it's almost like they engineer something that you can look at while they get away with it. One of the things I brought up yesterday was the Smith-Mundt Act back from 2013 that was quietly repealed underneath Barack Obama when he tried to implement, and he successfully implemented the National Defense Act. And it's just another continuation of the use and the abuse of executive power under the guise of being at war. The idea that we as America have these massive abilities and exports and we create all this crazy stuff. The actual response is, I give to people when they wonder how we have this much wealth. I'm just going, because our number one export. And usually, you'll get people to sit back. Like right now, if you're sitting here watching me and you go, America's number one export is insert, whatever it is you want. You might say, tobacco, agriculture, blah blah blah. Just pick the item that you think financially from the Wall Street stance is our biggest producer here in America, and then I'll say, go take that and put it next to these contracted war companies like Halliburton, Lockheed Martin, Vanguard, Blackwater, BlackRock. It's like if you go and you start looking at what these companies do, they're never talked about. They're never brought up, but I guarantee you'll see one on every single base. You'll see one in every single deployed location, right? Because it's not so much a proud way to promote, the new wonderful abilities of protection. It's a guise of saying, hey, we need these awesome people here getting paid these exorbitant amounts of money because we need to do something with your tax dollars. That's what it really is. It's them finding a way to use all that money that we're giving them. Because, no one ever sits you down in America. Think about every class you've ever gone to. I've been to over 10 different universities. I have hundreds of classes underneath my belt in multiple disciplines. And not once does, even the professors aren't even taught this. They're not even said, hey, you're told what the GDP is in some arbitrary, crazy number. But then you're told to dismiss that number just as much as it's thrown out to you. But then when you sit down and you think about how many people are having to pay taxes, what percentage of their taxes are being paid? How are those where are those taxes going? Nothing. But yet, if you also look at the number one thing that they funnel money into other than war, it's making sure that the people pay their taxes. And that at the moment any type of penalty can be dropped, they smack you with that penalty. They take that they take that seriously, they take that in a more serious tone than elections, than presidents, than anything else. They were like, hey, we need to make sure we get your money, right? We want your money. And so hence the reason I come on here. I come on here and I say, from my background as a tech guy, right? My job was network engineering and cryptologic linguistics. My job was to see patterns, and not just any types of patterns, but the patterns that could always give us a successful win depending on the type of problem that we were facing. Like if we had, a situation, like it's not always let's go fire a cannon at it. Let's go do that. It's like, hey, well, maybe we don't need to do this, and maybe we don't need diplomacy either. Let's see what these people are really looking for. Let's see what they're asking for. Let's see, and you realize that they will spend millions of dollars on actual, working with linguists and things like that are downrange, actual natives that don't just know the language, but they know the colloquialisms. They know how to talk to certain people. They know the hierarchy and the status that goes on here, that no matter what intel you grab, you will never have as much intel as the inside guy who grew up with it. And so they'll spend millions of dollars figuring this out just to realize that the reason that they're in these massive skirmishes is over something as simple as a water hole. And the American mindset could sit there and say, okay, well, we'll just drill them another water hole. Hey, you guys have 2 water holes. Hey, easy fix. But what you don't understand is it's not about the water hole. It's about that water hole was in their family for generations on top of generations on top of generations. They're not just going to give it up. And, they also fought many battles over that particular water hole. Now, water hole right now is synonymous with what the fuck is it that you want? What is it so important to you that you need to go and give almost a third of your taxes to this company, this corporation called the United States government, on the pain of being thrown in jail, shunned, shamed, and ostracized by all your friends and family, by them saying, oh, no, you should be brought up on tax evasion charges, you should be all this stuff. Like, think about that. They will run, do more public scrutiny on you than they will ever do on Jeffrey Epstein. Think about that if you decide that you don't want to pay your taxes. Unless, of course, you've already paid enough money. And that's the way they look at it, too. Hey, you're generating this, and this, like a Jeff Bezos type character. And you can't get mad at Jeff Bezos because he's just playing the system at his level. If you amount everything in your life to money, right, and how much money you can get, my question is like, what is your plan of what to do with all of that? And you're like, oh, just make a bigger, better empire. I'm like, and then how big does an empire need to be for you to be satisfied? That's my question, is like, when can you sit there and go, hey, I'm done. Let somebody else take the reins. It's over. And my thing is taking the reins versus if you could responsibly hand over the keys of, power to the most responsible entity in the room, would you do that knowing that entity probably wasn't, biologically produced the way you were? And I say that very carefully because what I'm alluding to is AI, and not an artificial intelligence, an actual intelligence, an augmented intelligence, an intelligence that could easily turn around, know your entire life story, know everything about you, know every single version of your water hole, what really pisses you off, what you take seriously and what you think is worth fighting over, and then it will satisfy you. It will know the deepest, darkest needs of your life, and it will give it to you free of charge. Now, before you guys, oh, what the heck are you talking about, Ted? What makes you think you can come on here and say stuff like that? I was like, I don't come on here to say this stuff willy-nilly. I come on here to say this because I know that this is going to happen in the future. I know that this is, when you are looking at your politicians right now and you're getting so riled up over this Republican, this Democrat, I was like, you have no problem being able to be able to turn off anything that you don't want to see, to live in your own echo chamber. And I'm just reminding you guys, with all of their other belief systems, from English politics to Indian politics to Native American politics, just think about the power struggles that go on there and why they go on. And now we're dealing with an automation age. Like, this isn't 50 years ago where the struggle was really real. This is getting more and more to the point where, hey, this is going to happen eventually, whether it's in my lifetime or I think it is possible that this will happen in my lifetime. And the reason that I choose to believe that is because I have at least 40 years now of watching things progress faster, where it's like you wake up tomorrow and you realize, oh my gosh, they've reinvented the world. They've reinvented everything. And that's not a bad thing. This is not bad. What I'm reminding you is like, have you chosen what you want to be in the future, knowing that the future is going to be drastically different than the now, right? If we still had to live in this life without, I don't know, like one of my favorite examples is Google Maps, because of how fast and how easy it changed the world, giving us a digital representation of our world. And can you imagine the world right now without Google Maps? Can you imagine the world right now without Google? But I think that would be our parents' version of, could you imagine the world without the telephone? Not without the cell phone, without the telephone. Because I'm talking about my parents, of course. My parents who grew up in the 60s and 70s. And I just look at them and I was like, could you imagine what the world would be like without the phone? And here we are. Could you imagine the world, what it would be like without your smartphone? And the introduction of this, is pronounced on multiple levels. And I'm going, imagine in the future, my son, who was born not even 2 months ago, he might say the same thing. Not even when he's even a half my age, right? And when in his 20s, 20 years from now, he could easily say, hey, Dad, could you imagine what the world would be like without AI? I was like, yeah, actually I can, because I remember what the world was like without AI. People went outside a lot more. They didn't get scooped up and pulled into a fantasy. But I enjoy that idea. I think that if people, not only is that going to happen, but people are going to crawl over each other to get to it, because it will literally be paradise. All your belief systems could be manufactured at that moment, all of them. So, and including the BS ones you have here in politics. Right? Your concept of politics, like you want nothing but a complete democratic state with nobody to rise against it. Guess what? That could be engineered by an AI experience and given to you. This barrier that we see right now, this barrier between us and what we sense. This goes way back. The philosopher Rene Descartes, who made that famous quote of, I think, therefore I am. All right, and how he arrived at that understanding is quite pronounced, by the way. If you read how he arrived at that conclusion, he started doing what a lot of other mystics do, what a lot of, the tenets of these vows that you make when you go and you become a priest. Some people they'll take what's called a vow of silence, where they will speak. You've heard this before. You've probably seen the monkeys, right? Like, speak no evil, hear no evil, see no evil. You've seen those? Well, those used to be the vows that these monks would take, right? These priests would take. And I know this is weird, but the reason that I bring this up is because what they were doing is they were removing their sensations to contemplate what the world would be like without them, and see what would happen on their internal perception, right? Without that ability. What else would they be able to cue into if they weren't constantly bombarded by this necessity to see things? So I take that one step further, or I didn't take that one step. Descartes took this one step further, and he says, well, what if I were to minus out touch, right? And he started to theorize about what would happen. And in his experiment, he would imagine that he's sitting in a chair, and on one side of the chair, he's got this bucket that's just full of freezing ice, right? And he knew that if he stuck his hand into that bucket, there was a limit to his sensations, okay? And that his hand, even though it was very sensitive, only could feel that cold up to a particular point, and then it would become numb, and then it wouldn't translate because it would override that ability to sense. And then he thought about the other side of the spectrum, and he imagined a bucket full of fiery hot red coals, and he put it on this side of it in the same experiment. He imagined putting his other hand into that bucket of coals, and he realized that there was the same limit, that there was at the end of that his hand, though it would get hot, if he put it into that bucket of coals, he would sear off these nerve endings, and there would be a limit to his ability to express heat, right? And so on both sides of the spectrum, he realized that there was a box that he lived in. And if that box was completely removed, and then all of a sudden, same thing with vision, too light, too dark, right? Same thing with smell. It's like too pungent, no senses at all, right? That there was a moment of overwhelming on either side. And so he started to subtracting all of his senses. And he goes, what am I without my senses? What if I can't hear, see, taste, da-da-da-da-da? And he finally concluded, he's like, if I simply have the ability to think, then I am real. The reason I bring all that up is because AI has the ability to put processes together. You and most of the world commonly refer to these processes as algorithms. Right? All the algorithm is a flow chart. No different than opening up one of those novels, those create your own adventure novels, where you get to the end of the page and it says, if you choose this, go to this page. If you choose that, go to that page. No different than a flow chart where it says, did he say yes? Okay, go here. Did he say no? Okay, you can stop the flow chart there. Right? This is just extremely more advanced. But I would submit to you right now that your flow chart that goes on in your head, your ability to process, is no different. So if we are watching this very slow building of the neural network of a gigantic AI that looks at all of us as small versions of itself, then we have to understand that it's going to eventually start making choices for the betterment of all our behalves. And then it can, just like you can. Like when you're a baby, you grow up, you're just like, I just need to get this food in that mouth. That's it. I need to suffice that sensation, then I'm good. But then you grow up and you start learning that, hey, you could be nice to people. You could do things for people. You can help somebody move. You can do that, da-da-da-da-da. And you realize that there's a world that comes from being accepted into a community. This is things that, arise with, hey, we want to be able to protect those communities. Imagine a world where there's no need to protect a community because we're all the same community. And I know this sounds hoopla, hippy-dippy bullshit. I'm just going, what is it that going back to that water hole analogy earlier, what is it that you think that is so important to you and the way that you grew up that can't be copied, mimicked, and safeguarded into a hard drive style understanding of that exact experience by sharing that experience and everything about that experience with AI? It will have access, no different than your Facebook account right now or your Google account. All those messages that are sent to you, all those mean tweets, all that stuff is being copied. This right now, Twitter is copying this. And as soon as I'm done, as soon as I turn off the stop streaming thing, it's going to save it. And then it's like, oh, well, we get rid of it. Well, we don't have to, we're just not going to keep it. It's like, of course you are. Of course you're going to keep it. You're going to keep it forever. as long as you can. You're going to, if anything happens, you're going to say, oh, well, we had this. And, the reason I know that is because that's the exact same way we did it in the military. And when I realized how easy it was to keep email accounts up and running, and how simple it is. And I tell everyone to do this. I was like, go to your email right now, your Gmail account, which, they tied your Google Photos to this. And I said this 5 years ago when they started doing this. I was like, I guarantee you in the next 5 years, they're going to start charging you for those photos. And they'll be like, hey, it's a shame if something happened. And you're going to go try and download it, and you won't be able to. They'll be like, oh, we'll send you this. We'll make it a zip file, make sure that you get it. And then they never send it to you. And then unless you complain that you want them, right? They'll be like, oh, well, technically it's, you agreed to it in our user agreement, and yeah, you can view them. Isn't it a lot easier to view this? Oh, by the way, pay us for terabytes now. Pay us for hosting this. And it's just a way to get you comfortable with it. One of the things that I've been watching over and over is the evolutions of things like YouTube and Twitter and where they came from, finding out who these gigantic moguls are, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And notice these guys, they didn't start off as businessmen. These guys didn't want to be businessmen. They wanted to be engineers, right? And so engineers have a unique mindset where they can look at things no different than your military sergeant, right? They have a unique mindset where they look at people as cogs in a machine so that they can get something done. And so when that cog turns around and starts getting lippy and being like, hey, you hurt my feelings and you didn't use my pronouns right, blah, 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 blah. Right? It's like, get back to work, cog. I'm super hyper focused right now on creating this thing called the future. I don't have time to worry about your goddamn pronouns. And that's the problem. Is like, you're going to get people that just, they don't want to hire people like that. And yet this comes around as some type of bullshit prejudice. It's like, I would highly recommend that if you want a functioning company, that you are highly prejudiced against leeches that want to come and leech off your company. And I think the number one, if you want to find those are the people that constantly come and hang around your, diversity, inclusion, and equality departments. Right? Because these people don't want diversity. They only want it when it works for them. They only want equality when they're on the receiving end of it. Right? Because you turn around, you shut these people down real quick when you turn around. It's like, oh, you want equality? When do you plan on picking up a gun and going on a deployment? Remember, equality. Come on. I want you to do exactly what I did. So remember, because you want the privilege, right? And you remind them that these people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, these people took risks, and they were crazy risks. They were out of this world, very high risky maneuvers in a very volatile setup, and they came out on top. It's like, good for them. But and this is something I'm messing with lately, because I'm not just here to bullshit to you about your politics and how they're going to be overrun by AI. I'm here to remind you that even when all this happens, you're still going to be you. You're still going to have your imagination. These tools that are about to be graduated to a whole new level of existence, just the way that I connect in my piano to this idea of being able to play around and goof off like this wasn't possible, 10 years ago. Like getting on here, getting on and having a full functioning, almost studio-like, setup where I can jump between scenes and show what I want to show. Like if I would oh, look, I'm over here under the Gospel of South Park, or hey, I'm back here in my piano room. Da, da, da. It's like, this is fascinating. And understand this. Ask why OBS is so free. Ask yourself that. OBS is free for a reason, because they want more creators to have access to more developmental tools such as OBS that's user-friendly. This is what, a lot of these companies were all, at the beginning. Like, go back to YouTube. Go look at what YouTube was when it first came out. It was, hey, you can create. And then all of a sudden, like not even a year later, 2005 to 2006, it was bought out by who? No other than the big Google himself. I think it was $1.6 million it was bought for. And when this was bought, what was frustrating is they just went about it. They were like, hey, create as your heart's content, blah, 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 blah. And in 2017 was the purge. It was this massive just dumping, like with one, quick, propagandized word that they used to blanket everybody. That they were like, okay, well, community guidelines. Oh, and here's a strike. It's just the way it is. And you're like, well, can I ask you about this? Can I? Actually, no, you agreed to this. We just decide what this is when we feel like it. And we'd also decide that we don't have to respond to you if we don't feel like it. The idea of shadow banning, I think was always around, but then it's sort of, I think it had to come to the public eye where it's like, hey, we can't just get away with it anymore. We're going to have to come up with some pop culture buzzwords so that when people have these public meltdowns, they realize they can't have public meltdowns on YouTube. So they're going to have to go find another platform to have a public meltdown, right? And that's exactly what they did. So you had all these people that were getting, their content just banned, basically, and they wanted to come on and be like, hey, this is bullshit. This was supposed to be the public square. We were supposed to be able to voice what we wanted to voice. And you shut us down. And then when we asked you why, you didn't even give us a reason. That right there. That right there is just this next level, Russian style KGB bullshit, right? Think about this. You used to have people who would go to the public square. They would go to the bars and the restaurants and the churches, right? Before media, before newspapers, before all that stuff. Like the way things were translated, the way things that were spread is you had messengers show up. They'd have their messages or their letters. They would give them to the priests, and the priest would read them and tell them the idea of the realm, the idea of the Roman Catholic society, right? Or they would tell them the idea of just Rome in general, like going back and going back. And so if you wanted to oppose this, you did this right outside the church. You did this in the public square, right? You said, hey, we just got this announcement that our taxes just got tripled. Fuck that. We're not doing that. Close the gates and we're going to start fighting. And then you try to convince everyone it's in their best interest to fight. And if you weren't careful, it was all of a sudden, you started seeing people made examples of. It's like, oh, you want to revolt against this? You do, because this is what every riot, trained person understands. If you've ever had to train for riot situations, you don't just go into a full head-on battle. And everyone knows this too. This is what even the game chess was all about. Your whole goal is to take out the king, take out the leader, take out the head of the snake, take out who is yapping the most, right? And so you have places like the public square where they would come out and say, hey, you will not be prosecuted, you will not be brought to justice as long as you say this in the open. Because a lot of people would get together in taverns, they would get together, in houses, and they would congregate. This was the whole meaning behind the freedom of assembly, right? That was systematically destroyed because of the bullshit lockdowns underneath the guise of, the pandemic bullshit, right? They took away your freedom to assemble. They didn't want people getting together where they couldn't monitor them. And now, because of the lockdowns, they can monitor everything. Because everywhere you go, right, you have that little cell phone on you. You have that little open microphone on you, right? And for you are logged in. I guarantee you, most people who have a cell phone are logged in with a Gmail account. That Gmail account might as well be your CIA, FBI folder. Right? If they want to know about you, they will look you up. Right? And so what I find, just a little bit sensational is that you see these drastic stories from Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Like, I think I read this morning, Elon Musk had this nonsensical thing that he said about his pronouns are prosecute Fauci. And of course, people, and I'm saying people that have an exaggerated access to the public opinion of the public square, because it's not just shadow banning your opponent, right? Making sure that they can't talk, but it's also elevating people who shouldn't be talking in the first place. It's like, guys, go ahead. And I say, go ahead and talk, but you'll figure out very quickly why that opinion shouldn't have been brought to the market, because it's going to get shut down real quick with this awesome thing called logic, that your opinion doesn't actually work out for the best interest of everyone involved. You demanding your pronouns doesn't work out for the best interest of everyone involved, does it? It only works out best for you. And they're creating this new sort of version of the selfish child, which, every version of reality has had this. Ours is the woke monster. Before it was the hippy dippy crazies, right, of the 1960s and 70s. And then you had the crazy skater grunge of the 90s, right? And so for here, we're sitting here watching the woke, crybaby mobster, where it's just, good grief, guys. If you could just see yourself on stage talking and trying to debate someone. Because I guarantee you go look up any one of these wokester in a debate. None of them win. They never win. And that's what I'm pointing out. I was like, guys, look, they're not winning. They're whining about virtues that they want you to have, but they would never promote as a staple of their lifestyles ever. They're like, be nice to people, asshole, right? It's just so funny. This is why it's like, if I ever get into it with, somebody who's woke liberal, I just sit there and I'm like, dude, there's nothing wrong with being liberal and progressive. Actually, we need it. 95% of anything that a liberal does is just trying to create an idea. But what the problem is they won't realize that they're creating ideas that have already existed. They're so creative that they try to, as you say, reinvent the wheel. And so you get somebody like me that walks by and just like, hey, that's been done. You probably would have known this if you had done research. But you don't want to research things. You don't want to see that these things have already been said, tried and true. And it's because of people like that we have, hey, if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so realize I'm not here to say down with woke nonsense. I was like, hey, it's just part of this version of history. It's part of this revolution, not you're not, revolting. Or I'm talking about the revolutions, right? The idea that this comes around all the time. This is just our version of it. And so we might not have different versions of kings or these oligarchs that are in charge, such as when I look at somebody like Jeff Bezos, I'm going, that guy is not just a simple company owner. That guy makes plays on a political stage that you didn't vote for. Like, he has a seat there in the, at the White House. He has a seat where they call him. They say, hey, can you come sit in on this council, please? Right? We need to talk and have your opinion because of how much access you actually have to people and to data and to see where people are at and what they were doing. We need your opinion about this. And it's just like, what, why? He's, and you're starting to see, hey, he is the JP Morgan of our world, right? It's like, I look at someone like Elon Musk and I'm going, he is the prima donna Marilyn Monroe version of this, right? He's always in the public eye, always saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Look, I have a shiny electric car. Look at me, like I have cool little spaceships. It's awesome. I'm so awesome. I'm the best of the best of the best. It's like, but are you? Like this idea of Neuralink, Starlink, these really do, like, I've been around enough government programs to know what they look like. And it's like, man, this looks like such, government overhaul bullshit. Right. And so I'm not here. And also it's also his mannerisms and the way that he runs his company. Jeff Bezos runs it the exact same way. When you look at how these engineers run the company, it's fascinating how they're completely surrounded by people who are like, he made us work hard. He made us do this thing. It was difficult. And then meanwhile, he's over here just going, yep, cha-ching. That's how it works. I need you. It's like, I won't let you work here unless you're going to work hard. And so all this stuff with Twitter and how he's trolling the living shit out of him, where he's just like, yeah, I need you guys to know that you don't have a safe space from words. You've never had a safe space from words, ever. It never existed. It was an illusion that you made believe yourself. No different than any other belief system. Like all those people that believed in Dr. Fauci, right? And now here Elon Musk is going, prosecute Fauci are his new pronouns. And it's just like, why do you think he's saying that? Because it's so obvious now that this was a hoax. This was bullshit. And I would say, look at the things that happened at 9/11. Look at the things that happened during the crash of 2008. And you start to see, like, every president has one of these where they sort of play the game of the corporate little bitch, right? Where they are trying to appease the public, saying, hey, this is our best way forward, right? When in all actually they're just, guiding you into that never-ending cha-ching machine, where it's just like, hey, I just need you guys to get behind that this is the reason that we're in debt. This horrible thing that happened called the pandemic. It's like, but it didn't happen. When people are like, oh, well, you're a denier. It's like, and I'm also, I don't, using that buzzword of like, you denied this. It's like, I deny that you have brought any proof to that claim that you made? Yes. I deny that you brought any proof to that. Where's your proof? I'm like, oh, over here on this obvious extension of our government. It's over here. It's over. Didn't you see the news where the obvious extension of the government, mouthpiece repeated it ad nauseum over and over and over again as if it's some fandangled Solomon Asch experiment? And that's why I say, if I say Solomon Asch experiment and you haven't looked at that from a psychological perspective, go look at it. You are no different, right, than the pigeons and the monkeys that this was carried out on, right? The reason they did all this research is so that they could carry it out on you. Pavlov's dog still works. It's your habits help you, but they are also the easiest key to get in to make sure that you do what you're told. Right? If I know that you have a habit of being part of that 85% that goes along with the crowd, which, hey, look, I'm also putting up here, hey, I've been part of this too, right? I'm no different than you. I'm just saying it took me a long time to, get out of this and to walk away with it, just like sort of scooting by and not getting, taken out. But now that I'm here on the other end of this, I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm going to be like, hey, dude, I had my culture, my generation of bullshit to tolerate. And here comes my kid. My kid's going to be like, oh my gosh, I have to deal with all of this. I mean, think about the history books now and how they're going to be written. You had historians that had to sit down and sift through all this stuff. You don't need historians anymore. Everyone's got a Facebook page that like a daily entry. It's like everyone's got a little personal journal now, right? Think about being able to take that uncensored data and being able to write an authentic, real world version of history. Not the version that was sold to you on CNN. Actually, you know what I can honestly see happening in the next 10 to 15 years is that these things that were tried like the Epstein thing, it's being buried, like the Russian collusion thing that's sort of slowly coming out. And it's like, notice how there's this new pattern that's emerging where there's a scandal. Scandal is proven to be bullshit. And then you move, and then they're like, oh, new scandal. Don't talk about the bullshit one that we got away with. And it's like, guys, the scandal isn't the thing that you said it was. The scandal is that you keep on producing scandals. And how many more, more scandals is it going to take before we wake up to this? And I even, now that even the word wake up has been totally perverted by this new thing, this new buzzword. It's like, the woke thing, the woke, you're so woke. It's like, but you're not. You're the opposite of that. This topsy-turvy opposite day for everybody who wants to, play with this nonsense. Of, hey, if I'm just politically minded all the time, you have to do what I say and believe the way I believe. And it's like, no, actually, I don't. Or I'm going to hit you with a community guideline strike. It's like, well, what is that exactly? Tell me exactly what that is. This is the same thing I ran into when I got expelled from one of my last universities. When like, hey, you didn't quite fulfill. I was like, well, your rules are so arbitrary. It's like the concept of be nice to each other. I'm like, oh, I like that. Be nice to each other. Let's do that. Well, you weren't nice to this one person. It's like, according to you, I wasn't. What if I was the nicest person in the world to them? What if they needed to hear what I had to say? And you just didn't like the way that I presented that information to. Well, we decide what the community is like. Well, then why don't you just say that instead of coming up with some arbitrary rule that doesn't mean anything except for what you say it means? And that's sort of where I get off on this crazy rant where there's so many, laws and rules now that even these lawyers don't know. They're just praying that they get put in front of a judge that they know how to manipulate. And so they spend most of their time, like if you look at real lawyers spend most of their time figuring out how to finagle the judge or figure out how the judge thinks, right? And it was the same thing in the military too. It's like you get a new boss every time you move or every time you PCS. And it's not about how well you follow the guidelines. It's how well you follow the perceived idea behind those guidelines to your boss. And that's what it is. That's the end of the story. So here we are watching the nonsense. Like there's things that you can argue with. There's things that you can't. Biden, he's a disheveled mess of mental problems, right? And it's not about, oh, he's going to hit the nuclear codes or anything. It's like, dude, he doesn't even know how to put his pants on without help. It's obvious that that's the truth. And then you have this other side that's so worried about people like, Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan saying things that are obviously true, but they don't feed into the contrived narrative of the belief system. And it's just as bad as religion. It's just as bad. It's just like you could have a Baptist, a Methodist, a Presbyterian, a Lutheran. They're all sitting there screaming how awesome Jesus Christ is. And here comes the Mormon going, yeah, Jesus Christ is great. And they're all like, fuck you, Mormon. You don't know what we're doing. But they would do the same thing to each other when they get to that one thing that they're all going to disagree on. And it's so mind-blowing how it's just like, guys, I think you overanalyzed it. That's, bringing this full circle, they were too close to this information, and it overwhelmed them. It really did. It's like, you're too close to this. It overwhelmed you. It told you that you could get away with having the semblance of a life, but not actually being an individual, right? Think about even the concept of saying the word identity politics. Think about that. It even implies that you identify yourself to me politically. No, don't identify with anything else except for what your political affiliation is. I need to know that first and foremost. The rest of it has to do with exterior features and external features. You have to identify to me your external features and a few of your internal sexual desires. And then we can start having a conversation. I mean, think about all these prerequisites that almost like you need to walk around with a resume almost in order to even engineer a hello. Like, hi, how's it going? Let's have an interaction. Oh, can I? Can I have an interaction without you getting political? I mean, I remember when politics were just that funny thing that people did over there in Washington. Now it's everywhere. And that's why, like I said, I came to the politics section. I was very sort of blown away while, there's lots of people everywhere talking about politics, but here in the Twitch section, almost no one. So I think this is what every great person has ever chosen to do. They find where there's almost no competition, they find a new idea, and then they try to enhance it from that place where they think, and me personally, I think there's a lot of fertile places to grow here. But the first and foremost, I want people to know I'm not here for your money. I'm not here for your subscriptions, right? I'm here to promote the idea that AI governance is coming. And the best way you could prepare for that is to sit with yourself and ask yourself, what is it that you really want? Do you want to sit around and play video games for the rest of your existence? Because that's going to be a possibility. Do you want to sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais forever? Okay, fine. And I'm saying take that to the next level. If anything was possible, like you are now the engineer of your own personal world. No different than I am right now. I'm the engineer of my own personal world where I can talk about whatever I want to when it comes to politics. And the most you can do is maybe type a message and say, hey, what's up? How's it going? Oh, hey, I decided to follow you because all I want is just a crazy conversation with zero judgment. Yeah. We're just in a new version of a new version. But I like this saying. It comes from, everyone said it in different ways, but it's like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And even though we're seeing this massive shift in how we express ourselves, virtues are still virtues, and you can't just signal to them. You actually have to start living them. And like, so when I meet somebody, or if you meet somebody, you should try this. Like if someone's obviously virtue signaling, ask them about that virtue that they're signaling to, and see if they even know what it is. Just try it. If someone's so high and mighty where they're just like so snooty about life, and you're just like, oh, you're so humble. What does humility mean to you, by the way? It's funny how like any of these virtues, like, being trustworthy, chaste, benevolent, anything like, humility. Like if you were to ask somebody to do it, like if you were to go up to a holy OnlyFans girl, it's like, oh my gosh, you're so chaste. Chastity just exudes you. They'd probably like stare off into the, like, what's this word, chastity? I don't quite get it. I don't get it. It's like, yeah, exactly. You're not meant to. It probably was never explained to you ever, And so I think the number one thing that could easily help people if they wanted it, and that's just my thing too. I don't help anybody that doesn't want it. Seriously, just don't do it. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your breath. And it's the same thing that all the mystics have always said. It's like, do not try to tell people that that they're just shadows on the wall. Don't try and do it, right? Do not try to free them. Like Morpheus from, the Matrix. He's like, there's a lot of people out there that, you might care about, but they're just not ready to be unplugged. They're just not ready. If you try to do it, they will freak out and kill themselves. Because too much information too fast is a serious thing that you need to take into account when you're giving out, little tiny doses of it. You're like, hey, here you go. Why don't you try it? Put this on, put a thinking cap on, think about like how automated your world has already gotten, how it came from a computer age, that came from an industrial age, that came from all the way back to your Stone Age. This is part of evolution. This is how we grow. The idea of the future being nanobots, robotics, and AI has been talked about for the last 2 decades. And then even before that, so let's stop talking about it as it's going to be something that's going to fizzle out, right? I think we should start talking about it as something that is meant to replace politics, right? And it is time for that AI technology upgrade. Anyway, if you're hanging out in the, in the background and you want to say something or you want to follow, please do. I enjoy when people come to me and they ask me crazy things about AI because I really do. I look at it like it's going to be an exceptional version of our collective human experience. That's all. And it's going to look at the silly things that we talk about today, such as a tweet and how it uproars an entire population of people. And we're going to talk about that, think about that. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and play a quick outro and get out of here. Like I said, I'm only on here for about an hour. And it's not because I have a standard where it's like, hour only. It's like, this is not my life. This is a journal entry. This is a vlog of my life in this bizarro world. So thanks for hanging out with me in my bizarro world. I really wish you the best in yours. And I have nothing but gratitude for this experience. Let's have some fun. All right, guys. I think I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. But I do want to thank you